Hello and welcome to our weekly dialogue with Helga Zepp May. She is the founder and chairwoman of the Schiller Institute. Today is May 8th, 2024. I'm Harley Schlanger and I will be your host. You can send us your questions and comments via email to questions@schillerinstitute.org, or you can post them on the chat room page. Now, Helga, there's an incredible volume of activity on the war front, on the diplomatic counter protests, and so on. But we're going to start with a very simple question, which I've received from several different people, which is, what is your assessment of the outcome of the two-day summit between Chinese President Xi Jinping and French President Macron?
I think it is overall quite important, as a matter of fact, very important, because it was the 60th anniversary of the resumption of diplomatic relations. China, France was actually the first country under Charles de Gaulle to recognize China. And the Chinese have put a very large importance on that fact and the relationship with France. Similarly, the French industry, like the German industry, are absolutely determined not to allow the so-called de-risking, which is just another word for decoupling. And I think, therefore, this is a very important outcome. I don't know why Chancellor Scholz, who visited Macron just in the days before Xi Jinping's visit, then preferred to go to Lithuania or to the Baltic countries instead. I think, the effort was clearly by Macron to bring in other forces. So he brought in Ursula Von der Leyen, which I think was not the best choice, because this woman is clinically anti-Chinese and just expressing the Anglosphere view on China. So, but I think given the difficulties and the incredible tense strategic situation, which is, beyond belief, one of crisis, I think it was very important. I think it's also extremely noteworthy that Macron felt it necessary to emphasize in the presence of Xi Jinping that France is not at war with Russia and does not plan regime change in Moscow. This coming immediately after his two-time announcement that France would send French troops into Ukraine should Ukraine lose on the battlefield. He had said that at the beginning of the month, last month already, and then again on May 2nd, he had repeated that in The Economist. So I think it's quite important, and obviously this reflects also Xi Jinping's perspective, which is a much larger one than you can get from most European leaders at this point. So I think it was extremely useful and important.
Okay, we're talking with Helga Zepp May, and you can send your questions to us at questions@schillerinstitute.org, or your comments. We like to hear from you. So Helga, let's keep going on this. There's a question that came in from London, and the questioner said, Foreign Secretary Cameron said the British government told Ukraine they can use British weapons to hit targets in Russia. The Anglo-American think tank, the Atlantic Council, applauded this decision, saying that Putin has not backed up his threats, and it's good to call out his bluffs on these red lines. So the questioner wrote, does Cameron not believe Putin and Lavrov when they say they will respond harshly to such attacks? Are Cameron and the others that deluded to think there'll be no response if the Kerch Bridge, for example, is brought down? And then he also asked, what about the Russian tactical nuclear exercises? Are they not paying attention in the West?
Well, the quick answer is yes, they are that deluded. As a matter of fact, I think the clinical definition of insanity is when you have lost the sense of reality and you see no anymore connection between cause and result. And I think that is for sure the case for many of such provocateurs in the West. I think the fact that Putin answered by ordering the maneuver of the tactical nuclear weapons in the southern military district is to be seen as a direct answer. And it was one of the NATO think tank officials, Albuquerque, who stressed the fact that Russia is doing regularly such rehearsals, maneuvers, but it is completely unheard of to announce such maneuvers in response to a couple of statements from leaders from the West. And Albuquerque said that means we are in uncharted waters concerning nuclear signaling. And that should be registered, because it was Macron who said he wants to send French troops to Ukraine. It was Cameron saying, the Ukrainians can use British missiles to reach deep inside the territory of Russia. Then Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat congressional leader from the United States, basically said that if Ukraine loses, then not only American money should be sent, but also American service women and men. Then you had a discussion about deployments of F-16, to which the Russian response was that they regard the F-16 as dual use, both nuclear capable but also conventional, but they will assume it has nuclear weapons and that they will immediately knock out all of these. Other commentators like Scott Ritter were very emphatic, saying, that if such things happen, these soldiers will be killed, or these probably mercenaries, whatever, will be killed on the spot, but there will be a response beyond. And Scott Ritter thinks, and he's after all the former UN weapon inspector in Iraq and has a extremely updated knowledge about weapon systems, he said that he thinks if this happens, any of these things from Macron, Cameron, Jeffries, that the Russian response will be to use tactical nuclear weapons, not inside Ukraine, but against the decision-making centers where these weapons and people are being deployed from. And that would be bases in Romania, in Poland, in France, in Germany. And, I think that this really is meant serious. And then if you listen to the inauguration announcement of Putin, his speech, his press conference, I think he is extremely stern, extremely cold, very, very serious. He said, look, Russia is still prepared for a dialogue with the West, but only on an equal level, not that Western leaders are trying to talk down to Russia, and that they have to give up to continuously try to weaken Russia, to contain it, and so forth. So I think we have reached a point, where either the Western leaders are being brought to reason, or we are entering World War III. I also just saw earlier today a statement by Jeffrey Sachs, who says we are sliding into World War III. We are not being told the truth. We're not being told the war planning or any other such things. And I can only agree. I think it's either utter incompetence and delusion and, somehow the idea that you have to destroy Russia, you have to destroy China for that matter. Some of them are thinking likewise. And this has to stop. And we need a public response from the population, because these leaders who are clearly minions and dwarfs have no right to lead the world into this direction, which could lead to the annihilation of civilization.
Now, Helga, there was a report earlier today that the U.S. is suspending weapons shipments to Israel, at least two categories of weapons. And a podcaster asked if this is meant as a follow-up of the warnings to Israel. Is Biden now serious about possibly cutting off weapons to Israel?
Well, I would hope so, but I don't think so. I think this is just, a warning shot. It's suspended. It's not eliminated. And in light of the fact that the Netanyahu and his war cabinet basically said that no matter what Hamas is saying in respect to the possible deal, which was negotiated, I think, by Qatar and Egypt, that Israel will go ahead with the IDF making the attack on Rafah, where more than 1 million Palestinians are in an absolutely desperate situation. I saw some messages from correspondents from the region, and they describe how these people are in absolute terror, thinking back and forth, should they go to another corner of Rafah, because only so far 100,000 people have been, advised to go to Khan Yunis. Can you imagine this? Khan Yunis is completely destroyed. It has no service anymore. It was one of the regions where people were told to leave a while ago, and where the most massive bombing had taken place. So it is absolutely cynical, and it is utmost psychological warfare on top of the massacre which is taking place. So in light of all of that, I think the suspension of these weapon shipments is absolutely not adequate whatsoever.
Now, here's a question that came in from someone who described herself as someone who had been a, quote, depressed cynic until she saw the protests on U.S. campuses. So she writes, my friends tell me these protests are orchestrated by Soros and the FBI as part of a chaos scenario to divert attention from the killing which continues in Gaza. But I was touched by what Alistair Crook said to Judge Napolitano, that he's been impressed by the empathy shown by protesters for the victims of Israeli aggression. So she asks, what is your view of the campus protests? Are they spreading through Europe, and do they have a chance to change the policy from the United States?
Well, yes, they are spreading to Europe. They have already emerged in the Sorbonne and in other French universities. They appeared in the Free University in Berlin, where students set up an encampment, and then the police basically came in like in the United States. But then, very importantly, was a statement issued by several professors of the university defending the right of the students to express their opinion. And I think this is very, very important. Likewise, you had many professors in the United States defending the students. I think what's going on here is that obviously young people, there's something good about young people, that they are in most cases, not yet spoiled. They still feel what is just and what is right. And I think, the present protest has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. I think this is a very disgusting effort to discriminate these students, because there are many Jewish people among them, both inside Israel but also inside the United States, who are equally appalled of what they see coming from Netanyahu. Netanyahu is not equal to Judaism. That's just a complete concoction of whoever, the media. And I think what's going on is that the Western establishments, but especially obviously the Biden administration, they are horrified that their whole pro-Israel narrative is falling apart, that they're losing control. There were extremely important polls in the United States, where I think 50% of all young people between 18 and 29 years old are convinced that what Israel is doing in Gaza is genocide, and they are very upset about it. And therefore, in light of the fact that we have an election year, and in the last election, the younger generation was an important factor in the election of Biden. And if he has to fear that factor disappears, that is why they are clamping down with such utmost brutality. And it makes clear to the whole world that the Constitution of the United States is at stake, because there's one thing which is stronger in the US than almost anywhere else, which is the First Amendment, the right to speak, the right to assemble, the right to express your opinion. And if that right is being squashed, then, what about the famous democracy? What about the famous rule-based order? All of that goes out of the window. So what is in reality happening is that the entire narrative about what the West represents goes down the drain with this police suppression. And I think the fact of the students and other layers of the young people not agreeing with that is the only hope for mankind, really, that the United States comes back to its reasonable mind.
Now, here's a question for you from a political activist in Germany who's referring to the upcoming European Union parliamentary elections, I think in early June. And he asks, do you think something might occur in some of the European countries, like the George Galloway election in the United Kingdom, where there's a complete breakaway from the mainstream parties?
I think so. I think it's very interesting that Galloway has a whole candidates movement. I forgot now the absolute number, but it's a very large number, maybe 200 people or so. And they all have as the number one item on their ticket, on their election program, Gaza, and to stop the genocide in Gaza. And given the fact that in Great Britain you had hundreds of thousands of people demonstrating, I indeed can very well imagine that this will lead to an earthquake, not only in Great Britain, but hopefully also in some other countries.
Well, let's hope so. Now, here's a question from a retired music teacher who wrote, just a note to thank you, referring to me, for your suggestion yesterday on my daily update that people should listen to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony in commemoration of the 200th anniversary of its premiere in Vienna. She said, I couldn't stop crying during the fourth movement. The message of Beethoven and Schiller was so beautiful. In my humble opinion, culture can help bridge the gap between different nations. And she said, Helga, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I could not agree more with you. Beethoven and Schiller, they are, for me, and not only for me, I think, but, they are the towering giants of, what I love about Germany, what I love about the classical culture. And, I think both of them are, the best in their field. And I know that there are probably people who don't agree with that, but I think if you listen to Beethoven a lot, it's the best for your soul and heart you can possibly do. And Schiller likewise, these two giants of the German classics, they have a healing power, because they put the universe back in shape, they make it look beautiful again, and they take you in this realm of ideal, which is so much different from the reality we are presently facing, but it helps to uplift you. And that is the mindset you need to deal with the, horrible things happening in the world today. I think the values, the image of man, which is expressed by Schiller, who wants man to be a beautiful soul, by Beethoven, who has this absolute rigorous idea of what genius is. I think this is more important to bath yourself in, and possibly every day to get through this period and be inspired to be so creative that you can come up with approaches how to deal with the problems around us. So I can full-heartedly agree, and we should really go back to the values of these two giants.
Well, here's a comment we just got in from Louisa, who says, this is a sad time when the media is complicit with a barbaric, savage genocide. And she's asking, how do you get around this problem of the media?
Well, I have good news for you there, because, we, the LaRouche movement, we publish since 50 years the Executive Intelligence Review. This is a magazine which has a huge reputation in the world. It is read by many parliamentarians from different countries. And we have since a while produced a daily alert. This is a very unique newsletter because it is not just a collection of facts and news and so forth, but it is the digested analysis reflecting the experience of 50 years of our movement, which was initiated by my late husband, Lyndon LaRouche, who, as you may know, developed a very unique and specific scientific method which influenced and inspired the kind of analysis which our editors are doing. And you can get every day the estimate, how did the strategic situation change from yesterday to today. And I would suggest that you get a 4-week free subscription, and you look at it. You can compare it to other newsletters you can find, and I'm pretty sure you will be absolutely impressed how incredibly unique it is, because it not only discusses facts and events, but it shows tendencies towards solutions. It shows you always where the way out is. So I think that to build up this strategic alert as an alternative to the media is the most efficient thing you can do.
All right, here's a question that just came in. Person wrote, I'm not a supporter of the Ukraine war. I consider its continuation to be an act of insanity. But don't you think it's reckless for Putin to proceed with tactical nuclear exercises and to announce it publicly?
Well, then ask yourself, what reckless actions have caused Putin to say that? I mean, Putin has, and Russia in general, they have made very clear what is the red line for them to use nuclear weapons. They have said it in writing and in speaking many, many times that they will only use nuclear weapons when the physical existence of the territory of Russia is threatened. Now, that is their good right. I mean, as long as we are in the insane realm of having weapon industries with potential to kill each other 100 times over, you will have such doctrines. And, if you look at NATO doctrine, the US doctrine does not even exclude the first use of nuclear weapons. How about that? Why is that not being discussed? So when you have now this, what I mentioned earlier, the announcement of Putin to rehearse the use of tactical nuclear weapons in response to what Macron said, what Cameron said, what Hakeem Jeffries said, the deployment of F-16, all of these deployments mean a threat to the physical existence of Russia. So what is the big surprise? So that is what I think the people need to come to reckon with, that cause and effect do happen. We are in a rational universe where if you do one thing, you have to expect that the result will be the next thing. So the way to stop that is not to be upset about Putin, but to be upset about the Western leaders who have obviously, have you heard any time talking of these people about a diplomatic solution? No, what they do is when in the March 22 between Ukraine and Russia, you had a perfectly functioning agreement to end the war after basically 4-6 weeks, mediated by Turkey, and in Istanbul they had a deal ready to be signed to stop this war, which was a limited special military operation at that time. And what happens? this other person from Great Britain, Boris Johnson, flew into Kiev and told Zelensky, continue the war, we will fully back you. So all the people who have died in the meantime, for what? For the pockets to be filled of the military-industrial complex, since they can go to Boris Johnson, or their relatives can go to Boris Johnson and thank him for that. There has to be an end, and we have to go back to diplomacy. We have to negotiate a solution. And, you have right now the Chinese 12-point program, which is very active and on the table, which does include Russia. And if you don't include Russia, you can forget it. There will be no solution. How can you think you have a solution without one of the sides involved in the war? Which is why the upcoming conference in Switzerland is a useless enterprise, because it does not include Russia. But the Chinese proposal is on the table and should be implemented right away. And the European leaders should be confronted of why do they not try to end a war which risks to escalate into World War III.
Well, I have one more question for you here, Helga. Someone writes, I haven't heard anything new about the Brics expansion. Do you have an update on the new Brics members? Are they being fully integrated into the Brics? Are they now full-fledged members?
Well, there is a lot of diplomatic activity going on. Obviously, there is a huge assault on some countries who wanted or want to be part of the Brics. For example, Argentina is being absolutely dismantled right now with this very strange President Milei, but big opposition against him is developing as well. Then Egypt is under tremendous attack by the IMF. Ethiopia, likewise. South Africa, they will have an election, and there is a big worry what will come out of that. So it's not an easy process. But on the other side, if you listen to statements coming from other countries, like Nigeria or the Western African nations, or Indonesia, or many, many others, they all want to be part of the BRICS Plus, and it's altogether 40 more countries who are applying to be members. So I expect that this process will accelerate over this year, and by the next BRICS summit, I think it will be in October in Kazan in Russia, I expect that there will be a much larger list of countries having joined.
Actually, we just got another question for you, Helga. Someone responded to what you said earlier. What was the point of Ursula Von der Leyen, who she calls Von der Crazy, being at these meetings?
I mean, obviously, given the fact that Ursula von der Leyen's position is, this woman was extremely bad as a defense minister of Germany. She almost ruined the German army single-handedly by herself. Then she became head of the EU Commission. And, she just doesn't know any job to do well. She's not acting in the interest of European member states. And there are now big motions to get her out of this position, which I can only hope will succeed. However, the likely successor would be Mario Draghi, and that way you get from, in German, you would say, from Regen in die Traufe. It's not going to get better. I think Macron has, I don't know if it was his idea. He, after all, had initiated the proposal for von der Leyen to become president of the EU Commission in the first place. So maybe, Macron is not always very coherent in what he is doing. On the one side, he does want to have a relationship with China, but then he probably had her in as a counterweight. I think it's just stupid games. And, I think, the European nations should go back to the tradition of de Gaulle, They should claim their independence. They should not be, drawn into World War III by the Anglosphere. And the more the European countries start to assert their independence and sovereignty, the better. And Mrs. von der Leyen is unfortunately not useful if you want to go in that direction.
Well, Helga, those are all the questions I have. I hope people take seriously your proposal that they sign up for the free daily alert subscription. Any final words from you?
Well, I think we are in an incredibly dangerous moment, and I would like people to really think, where are we in terms of the danger of World War III? Because only if you recognize that this could happen, and it would eliminate everything the humankind has produced so far. I mean, we are talking about Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, that beautiful symphony, and all the other things produced by human creativity would vanish. There would not even be an historian left to investigate why did this happen. And for me, that idea, that everything humankind has produced is at stake by reckless people who just continue to play their geopolitical games for power, for money, for control, for privilege, that has to be stopped, and we have to have a dramatic change in the strategic orientation, which is why I'm proposing this international security and development architecture to be put on the table as quickly as possible.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us this week, and we'll see you again next week, Helga.
Yes, till next week.